Hello! So the Maule M7 was released yesterday for Microsoft Flight Simulator, and I bought a copy of it last night, but I went out with some friends, and by the time I got back I'd had too many glasses of wine and there was no way I was going to be able to sensibly fly an air or operate a virtual aeroplane. So here we are this morning, and we have perfect weather this morning actually at Wycombe Air Park, so I thought it would be a good opportunity to go and take this for a test flight and see how it goes. So it's a short takeoff landing aircraft. I'm not sure its entire history, but the modelling of it in the simulator is really something else. So you can see, the material modelling in the surfaces is very, very good. Obviously, we're kind of becoming blasé about this, expecting aircraft to be this good, but it really is good. I mean, you can see the way the control surfaces work and where things interact in the body is really, really nice. So if you go and have a look at that in terms of the elevators there and the rudder, everything, all the linkages, it's very, very nicely done. And if we go and operate the flaps, will they move? There we go. So you will notice actually with the flaps on this, and the raised flaps are actually above the natural angle of the airfoil surface for cruise. So it is mentioned in the pilot operating handbook about it that using them in the raised position is kind of optional. You would normally be, if you're just doing normal slow flight, you would keep them in their natural position. Okay, let's go and jump inside. So you can see the first thing I really noticed when I got inside this thing in the simulator is how big the cabin is. Even if you operate the zoom on the camera and think, okay, let's put ourselves to a normal eye view instead of the slightly fisheye view that some aeroplanes give you, it seems big. But then if you look from outside, it actually is quite big compared to some aeroplanes. So the cabin is big. So again, yeah, the modelling is a bit of a mixed bag with modelling. I don't usually get too involved in critiquing this sort of thing because I'm not an expert on 3D modelling. But the plungers and bolts and stuff all look great. It's just the screw heads around the instruments look a bit odd, but that might be how they really are in the real thing. But I suspect not, because if you look on the floor it starts to let itself down a bit. Otherwise, it's really good. So anyway, I actually prefer things that are functional and easy to read. So the black box aircraft are kind of like that. The Islanders and the Trilander and the Bulldog, they focus on things being easy to read rather than being photorealistic. And I actually think there's a debate to be had about that probably for a simulator anyway. Okay, so how do we get this thing started? We turn the battery and the alternator on. We go and turn the mixture lever the shut-off valve to both. We push in the mixture to rich. We push the propeller to high RPM. We turn on the anti-collision lights. And then we can start the engine. The starter switch is underneath here. So the sounds are a bit odd with starting the engine, but it's perfectly serviceable. Once you've got the engine up and running, we can turn on the avionics master switch, which will open up the GPSs, and then we can turn on the alternator. I have noticed there's a couple of bugs. If you restart your flight without going back to the main menu, you're liable to not be able to start the alternator. And also some of the switch positions might not reflect where your controller positions are, and you'll have fun and games getting things back in sync. So there is a little clipboard here where you can switch out the radio navigation kit. There is a wheel chock setting there. It's a bit odd that this means the opposite. There's a debate there about user interface design, about how you represent states. But having clicked that, it now means it doesn't mean that they are set, it means that clicking the option would set them. So yeah, I go back and forth on which is the correct way that statuses should be shown in interfaces. Okay, so while we're sat here on the parking brake, I've just checked it. You can see the cylinder head temperature isn't really moving yet, it's slowly starting to move. The pilot operating handbook talks about running the aeroplane up at 2000 RPM. to check things out, like the magnetos if you're going to go and do mag checks. So yeah, you can obviously see as soon as you raise it up to 2000 RPM, then the cylinder head temperature is coming up. So we'll drop it back down. Okay, so let's go and turn the nav lights on. It's always a bit, I think this is a bit of an ergonomic disaster, putting the switches beneath these levers. I mean, in the real thing that might not be an issue because your fingers can obviously get around them, but in the sim it's a bit of a nightmare. We'll turn the pitot heat on. We're about to taxi out anyway, so parking brake off, flaps to takeoff position, and we will increase the throttle gently and press F, and then press space to sit ourselves up in the cockpit. We'll press B to calibrate the altimeter. We'll press D to calibrate the gyro compass against the whiskey compass or binnacle compass, whichever term you want to use. Okay, so we're just going to gently taxi out. So ground handling is a bit odd. You can see it does sway on the tyres, but it seems there's no give at all in that. This taxiway is quite bumpy, by the way. That's why the nose is dipping up and down. That's not the tail coming off the ground. So yeah, it does sway a little bit. It just seems to be a little bit digital in the way that behaves. Okay, so let's go and center our view up and get ready for this takeoff. So we're just going to go and fly the circuit basically at Wycombe Air Park to see how this behaves. So it's runway 24 we're taking off from. There's no wind today. So full throttle. Small amount of right rudder is needed to hold the airplane in a straight line on takeoff. And it's in the air immediately, look. So it's lifted itself off from its attitude on the ground. It's lifted itself immediately into the air. It's very, very pitch sensitive, it has to be said. So I'm coming off the flaps, or lifting the flaps to their first position, which is in line with the airfoil. So as we climb out, we've just crossed the boundary of the airfield, so we turn to 30 degrees. So I'm just trying to trim the aeroplane out. So we're climbing out very rapidly. Just keeping an eye on attitude here. It's very, very pitchy, it has to be said. So we can see the Hambledon Valley just coming. We can see Freeth and Lane End passing by on the right. Yeah, it's a struggle to keep control of the pitch all the time. Now it may be that once I get the speed stabilised out for cruise, we're running about 75% throttle now, so I'm going to turn right. So while messing around with pitch, I've probably overshot the turning point. So let's sit down in the cockpit. So we're on standard rate. We've climbed a bit too high. Yeah, we're a little bit all over the place. We're looking for, there's the tower in the distance, there's the main road. So we're looking for about here. So we fly until we are over the top of the beast. So the beast is this somewhat famous patch of trees. If you've not seen any of the previous videos where I've been doing this circuit. So I'm just coming back down towards 1500 gently. I'm trimming and trimming and trimming and trimming to try and stop this from raising its nose, and it's raising its nose and raising its nose. So it's as it's accelerating, so it's very, very pitch sensitive in terms of airspeed. Okay, so we turn right now to 60 degrees. So keeping an eye on the vertical speed. So I have no doubt that this aircraft is great fun for bombing around at low level, and at very low speeds, but at kind of cruise speed it's incredibly sensitive. You can see even just moving the ailerons, if you get any amount of elevator deflection, it kicks the aeroplane all over the place. Maybe I'm being overly sensitive to it because I'm travelling quite fast. Maybe if we come back to 50% throttle and see how we get on. So it seems to be a little bit of wind up here that we didn't see on the ground because we're being pushed away from the airfield slightly. And we're dropping. So yeah, getting rid of 50%. Also, getting rid of 25% of the throttle has lost us several hundred feet in very short order. So I'm just replacing that. So that's a good test actually. So having the wings in this configuration, obviously it's generating a lot of lift that when we didn't have thrust over the wing we lost, and we started losing vertical positioning very quickly. Okay, so there's the house and the garden you can see there. There's a walled garden. It's quite difficult to see in the simulator. So we turn right towards the industrial estate. We avoid travelling over the top of this road or this part of the estate. And we now descend towards the industrial estate, which should take us to about 150 degrees or thereabouts. We're coming down to 1,000 feet. If we look out right, we should see the airfield behind the pillar. Yeah, and you can see the VASI lights already. We're in the right kind of place vertically, and then we make our turn towards the airfield. So we're too high at the moment, so we're just losing it. There we go, we're back on track. So we are bringing the flaps in. Press F. Press space so we can see over the nose. So never having landed this before, I don't know how this is going to go. We almost three-pointed it. So I'll take that for a first landing. So we'll let it roll, raise the flaps to the first position again, which is in line with the airfoil. I think my major takeaway from this is just how pitchy it was. So holding the stick back to stop the aeroplane as I was braking there from nosing over, get onto the yellow line and taxi back. Let's have a look at it from outside as we go back. It's a lovely looking aeroplane, isn't it? The one thing that does bug me about many of the aeroplanes in Flight Simulator is the animation of the spinner. They have this odd thing where the symmetry isn't quite there, and there's only a short animation for the blurring. Obviously it's quite a nice visual effect, but you can see the repeat of the animation. And it kind of... I mean, I have no illusions, it's probably a really tough thing to pull off. But Asobo seem to have nailed it with the aircraft they've done. Although I suspect when we talk about Asobo aircraft, we're actually talking about Carinado, I think. I suspect they worked on all of those aircraft for Asobo. So yeah, it would be good fun to take this up and do some short takeoff landing exercises with it. I just thought it was good to do a normal-ish attempt at a circuit in it to see how it behaves in a circuit. So obviously we can turn the pitot heat back off now if we could get to the switch, which we can't. Again, that's a bit of a ergonomic nightmare operating those switches. And a bit of a nightmare to see where you're going in the aeroplane as well. Get rid of Mr. Forklift out of the way. Turning circle is not great. Can you see that? It's interesting as well that you can see there I'm accidentally imparting aileron when operating the rudder. So yeah, ground handling is a bit of a struggle. It doesn't turn very tightly at all, even at very low speeds. Okay, so pull the mixture back, turn the mags off, oops, turn the lights off if you can get to the switches, turn the alternator, turn it is a nightmare because of what the layout here in terms of being able to operate in the simulator sensibly. Turn the battery off, turn the shut-off valves back. So yeah, it's kind of a nightmare. I wonder if the doors operate. Yes, they do. It's quite nice to know, I guess. What about the... I don't think it's got retractable windows, has it? I'm just trying out some of the click spots to see what works, what doesn't. But yeah, it's good fun. As I said though, it's very, very pitch sensitive, and that may be because I didn't have the flaps in cruise position. I kept them in kind of the normal position as it talks about them in the pilot operating handbook. Maybe if I'd raised the flaps completely out of the way of the wing, then it would have been far less pitch sensitive, but that's something we can try on later flights. Okay, so hopefully you enjoyed that. That was the Maule M7 in Microsoft Flight Simulator. It's in the marketplace right now. If you like this sort of aeroplane, you'll probably be interested in it. I've probably got far too many of this sort of aeroplane now. So anyway, I'll see you again soon. Hopefully you enjoyed that. Take care.